I have this delivery truck that I saw posted on a number of different places. One of them was Christie Creative Crew Blogspot. My son works for UPS, so I thought, what a great gift. So I went ahead and made this with modifications to what they had, because I wanted my design to be a little different from what they had. And then I filled it up with mini Snickers bars and shipped it off, so via UPS. Now this, I call it a delivery truck because the same design can be used to make a FedEx truck or a U.S. Postal Service delivery truck. Somebody posted this picture this week on Facebook with a FedEx, USPS, and UPS trucks all in the same photo. That's kind of interesting. But I brought that into my software just as a reference for how to put the logos on the finished trucks. So I didn't make the front of my truck sloping down. I just wanted to keep it simple. But you notice all three truck designs are very similar. So this project it could be cut in white or brown, and you can, if you have other delivery services that you use that have this shape of truck, you can decorate it how you would like to. So we'll get started on this. I put all the pieces on this screen with labels as to what part of the design serves as what part of the box, because it can be very confusing. Now I cut mine in two pieces and glued them together. This section here actually glues on to this piece here. So if you had paper, let's say you wanted to make a white truck and you have some 11 by 17 cardstock, you could actually cut this all out of one piece and weld this to it. But I only had 12 by 12 paper, so I made my design in two pieces. So this piece includes the box itself that's inside the truck, and it includes the outside, the front end of the truck, and the hood and the windshield. And then this piece here covers over this piece. This is the roof and the side of the tall part of the truck. And then I put double doors on the back that overlap just so that it would hold all the candy in. You can put different latches on it. On my truck, I didn't show a picture of the back, but I just used Aleene's Tack It Over and Over and put a big glob of glue at the top and bottom, let it dry, and then the door would just stay closed when it was all full of the key. So I'll show you how I made this. It's pretty simple. I'll keep all the pieces off to the side here for reference. And it's pretty simple. We're going to start with importing a basic shape, and I need a square, so I type SQ in the find box, double click on the square, and we bring that in. I'll bring that in over here. I'll work on this top piece first. This box should measure 11.5 inches, 11.5 by 5.5, and I'm going to line this up to the 0 for the X and the 0 for the Y, and press enter. That gives me a box that is on the exact 0 here, so that I can draw my lines based on the grid. And I'm going to turn the grid snapping on to 1/2, so that as I draw lines, they'll draw straight and be very precise. So on this first piece, I'm going to score the across lines here that you see. And so I'll click on the pen tool and add a layer by clicking on the larger of the green plus icons in the lower right corner. So I have a new layer here on the right, and that's where my score lines will be drawn. I need to draw a score line at 1.5 inches, so here's my inch, and then I can see the half inch mark right here. So left click at the beginning and then right click at the end of the line, and I'll do the same from the bottom. Here's a 1/2 inch and an inch, so 1.5 inches, left click and right click. And this basically, all these, the top and the bottom, are going to be tabs, and they won't be seen on the finished project. Now the vertical lines, the score lines, there's a few here. We have one at 1.5 inch, and we're just going to score between the horizontal lines. Left click and right click at 1.5, and then at 6.5. And if you notice up here, you can see the measurements. So I'm right at left click. Even if I don't position my mouse accurately, it snaps exactly to the 1/2 inch, which is very helpful when doing this kind of line. So at 8 inches, left click and right click, and then 9.5 inches, left click and right click. So these are the score lines for the top part of the box. And what I'm going to do on that is click on that layer. I'm going to click on the lock to make it gold, and then I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to add the cutting line. So you notice that the cutting lines cut top and bottom up to the score lines. If I don't lock the layer, the cut lines are going to want to connect to the score lines, and I don't want them connected. So to create the cut lines, I'm going to, at the same locations, left click at the 1/2 inch mark and right click, top and bottom, left click and right click, and do that for each one of these score lines. Because these are tabs, they need to fold under. Score lines can be done with dash lines, or they can be done with an embossing tool or an engraving tool, depending on what you prefer. For this project, I just use dash lines. So on my locked layer here for score lines, I click on the color box and select line style if I want to do dashes, and I can change it, create new line style, and make those into dashes, and these others will stay for cutting lines. I do like to label my layers because it can get complex and confusing when you have so many different parts. So on this one, these are going to be cut lines. Cut lines, and I double click this one and call these score lines, and so that part of the design is ready to go. I don't have to label any of these as long as I have this for reference, because I'm not going to be cutting any of the text. I labeled the text layer as do not cut text. That way it won't get cut. And this is mostly for demo over here anyway. So what we're going to do is now create the bottom part of the design. That's the side of the truck and the roof and the doors. So again, I'm going to click on my top arrow over here, the selection arrow, click on my basic shapes and double click the square to get it. This can stay on the layer with the top part because they're all going to be the same color. So for this one, I'm going to size this to 9.5 by 3 inches. Again, keeping the X and the Y at 0. So the width will be 9.5 and the height will be 3 inches. Y should have been 0. No. I had it right the first time. I'll give it a little room here because I have another piece that needs to go there. Okay, so we have, if you notice on the reference picture here, this is this part of the design. Well, I have some doors to add and a tab. Well, the doors measure 3.5 by 2.5. So what I'm going to do is use Control Shift and drag and then resize this to 3.5 and 2.5 inches tall. So that gives me a door. And then I'll do that again. Control Shift click, and I'm going to move this up for a tab, and this needs to be let's see, I make notes so I can see 2.5 by a half. So this will be 2.5 inches wide and a 0.5 high. To make sure this is in the correct place, I'm going to hold a shift and click and then type V to vertically align. That'll put this perfectly in the center, which is where I want it. The snapping is still on, so it's in a good position there. Now this one needs to be at the bottom. I can make sure that it's at the 0, which it is. And again, I'm going to hold Control Shift and click and drag this one over to the right. And now I have my doors and tab, the side, roof, and trucks side, both sides in the roof. Now I'm going to add a new layer to put the score lines on. Just clicking the large green plus icon in the lower right adds a new layer, and you can see that it's highlighted here. Anything that I draw right now will go to that layer. So what I'm going to do is click again on the pen tool, left click right where I want the score lines, which is between the two shapes. Left click here, and I'm going to go up and left click, go across and left click, down, left click, and across, right click to end the line. And I'll make these into score lines by clicking line style from the color icon and create new line style, and now I have my score lines for this piece. I'm going to hide the score lines though, because I want to select these pieces and I want to weld them all together. So with them all selected, I'll click on the weld icon or use Control W, and they all weld together because with snapping in place, they lined up perfectly. And so now I have my score lines and I have my box for all the pieces. So these are all ready to cut out of whatever color I determined that I would like for my truck, whether it's brown or white. I think that I need to select this green thing and put it on its own layer, because this one seems that it's on a different layer. I don't want the score lines to be on the same layer as the cut lines. So these score lines, I can select from the thumbnails over here. These would be score lines because I have them labeled there. And hold Shift, and I can select the other score lines and use the smaller of the two green plus icons to send all the score lines to their own layer at the top, and then trash any empty layers, and I'll just call this score lines again. Score lines. So now all the score lines are on their own layer, and I won't lose them, and it makes a difference if I'm going to use my engraving tool and I want them to be solid, or if I'm going to use my blade and want them dashed. So I leave them separate so that I can always choose before I do the project what type of lines that I want. These lines can be changed back to solid by clicking the line style and clicking on this arrow here where it says dashes and select no dashes, and those lines would turn back to solid. As long as they're on their own layer, the user has the option of creating whichever line style they like. So these are the pieces for the box. Let's take a look at the box again. I'll take it over to contrast so you can see. Now the other pieces that I used here were, I used some metallic silver for the window, wheels, for the center of the wheels, of the hubcaps, and the headlights. I used the same silver, brushed silver metallic paper. And then there's black for the wheels and the outside ring of the lights. And then Dye suggested, why not, instead of putting the silver on the windshield, why not do some acetate so that the recipient can see what's inside the box. Well, that's okay. They're not going to see a person or a driver. They're going to see a bunch of wrapped up Snickers bars through the window. But if that's what you would like, then instead of cutting, like I have here, instead of cutting a silver windshield, we would be cutting a hole here. So I'll show you how I work with the windshield. If I'm cutting out a window, let's add a new layer here, and I'm going to get a square again. Of course it goes way over here. What I want it to do is, without snapping on, I want the window to fit. But if I'm cutting a hole out for the window, I have to leave room, that ½ inch, for this glue tab. So my window that I cut out can't go too close to that edge or my tab is going to show. So if I want to cut a window out, I don't want it to go all the way to the edge because it needs some kind of frame to hold it. So you can make your window whatever size you want. I'll make a copy of this so we can use it another way. But in order to make your window cut out, I have it selected. I'll hold the shift and I'll select the truck and click on join, and now I have a cutout window. If I want to have a piece of acetate, it needs to be larger. I would probably make the acetate about as big as the whole windshield so that it has room to be glued on in back of the opening. So then this I would send to its own layer, and I would call this acetate. And maybe I'll just kind of make it a light color. And so it's a backing, and then this would be glued behind this. And you can see what's in the back of the truck that way through the window. It's a pretty simple process. Now, if you would rather not use the acetate, we'll undo that.
Before you do, Julie.
Yes.
Where's the tab going? Is it going to the other part, or?
The tab is going to be glued. Oh yeah, it's going to be glued to this edge, so it should be over here. It's going to be glued to this edge. I had that in my demo, but over here. You see that? So the tab does go here. Good point. And that's why I label all this stuff, because I get turned around when I'm working with pieces that fold back and fold up and fold all over. Now, if you don't want if you want to glue your window on, you can make it a little bit whiter as I did mine. And you can just cut it out again out of the silver or whatever you'd like to. I send it to its own layer and just label it silver. And I'll put it on its own layer instead of on the silver layer so that I have that option when I'm ready to cut. I can decide, do I want a window opening or do I want to glue a silver piece on? So I can just label this or change it to a silver color. And so this gives you the option of doing it either way. So the next thing that I need are the wheels, and I just use a circle. I'll add a new layer for this because they will be black, and I like to keep colors, light colors on their own layers. So I'll click on the basic shapes and type in CI and get my circle, double click. And I need to size, one of my circles is going to be 1 inch, that would be the hubcap. Then Control Shift click gives me another circle. Well, the black circle I'm going to make for the wheels, I'm going to make that with the gold lock icon on. I'm going to make those circles 1.5 inch. And the hubcaps that go here, I will make them, keep them at 1 inch. So I'll select both of these and edit, duplicate, and I need 4 columns. Actually, I only need 1 column, and I need 4 rows with no space in the middle. Maybe just maybe a 0.2. I'll do a 0.1. So they'll fit on here and apply. So that I have all my design pieces here. I can move them over a little bit. I am going to cut them separately, or if I want to cut them all at the same time, I can position my paper accordingly on the mat. But I would probably need to move over these so that they're not running into each other. And there's more room over here. But these are going to be silver. So I'll select these and send them to their own layer and type silver here. And then these I will send to their own layer, and I'll type black, or just select black here, select silver for these, and type black here. Again, so I don't get confused when I'm cutting as to what colors these pieces should be. So now I have my windshield is silver, these are silver, and these are black. I'll get rid of empty layers, and then the cutting pieces, I use brown for my UPS truck, but if you were doing a white truck, then you can change your pieces to white if you want to. So that's just representative. If I go to the contrast matte now, you can see the colors a little bit easier. So what else did I forget? I got a window, hub, circle, lights, acetate. Oh, the logo. Here's the logo I use, the UPS logo. I did a print and cut, and that's probably the easiest. When you're doing a logo, you can go Google the logo that you want. For the UPS one, it was quite easy. I do a Google search for UPS logo, and you can look at different ones. They're all different sizes. If you hover over them, it tells you the size and what kind of file. This is a PNG file. This is a SVG, but it's got lots of layers and it's not easy to work with. I found this one was pretty nice. So just a standard image search for UPS logo. When I click that one, you can see that it doesn't have a background. It has the background removed. So I right-click and save image as, and it's saved as a PNG file. So when I open Make a Cut and I go to Pixel Trace and get that logo and click on Open, I can click on the alpha layer, texturized path, and apply, and I get just the logo selected. I don't even have to adjust the threshold. I import and I get the logo right there ready to do my print and cut. Now I figured out from looking at the pictures that I probably needed to make my logo no more than about a third of the size of the actual side of the truck. So I chose to make my logo just about 1.5 inches high. You can make yours whatever you want. Now FedEx wasn't quite as easy, but what I did to get the FedEx logo, I couldn't find one that had an alpha layer on it. So I just type in FedEx logo, and you can choose any of these images. Right click, save image as, and I labeled it. And to bring that one in, I just, again, Pixel Trace, find the FedEx, and it is also a PNG file, but on this one I had to set it to 255, texturized path, and apply changes, so that when it came in this way. And when you print this one, you can go to print preview, you can see that it prints with a white background and it's ready to cut. They do have a copyright symbol or trademark registered, so if you print it, you can print with the registration mark, or you can do a selection if you don't want to print it with the registration marks. You can bring it in and use the control key, hold the control key down, and drag around just the part of the design that you want to keep, texturized path, and do it at maximum threshold at 255, apply changes, and bring it in so that you have a logo that will look authentic. And just as Brian was saying earlier with the FedEx, you see the lines here, but if you don't have the print shape outlines selected in your print options, when you go to print preview, you'll see that there are no lines here to print, so you don't have to worry about the lines. So if you want the lines, you can print them with the lines. If you don't, then you don't have to print the lines. And similar with the United States Postal Service, this one I did as a PNG, where if I wanted to use vinyl, I could cut this in blue vinyl with a red line in between, or print and cut, and we bring it in the same way as the FedEx. So to bring in the image with just the colors with vinyl or even paper, if you wanted to go to all the trouble of doing those letters one at a time, we would need to get the logo again. This would be the USPS logo, and I got a PNG file here, and you notice that all these pieces are separate automatically when I bring it in, so I can go ahead and import as is, and then I can cut this in whatever color that I want. This would be cut in blue, and then you can add the the red and blue stripes. It's not too easy to see here, but I use these reference pictures kind of to help me create a more realistic look to my project. It's not exactly proportional, and it's not exactly realistic. There's no door here for the driver or windows on this side, but you can get as fancy as you would like.